folks, welcome to the channel, Thinking Theology. I'm Don. Today I'm taking a look at John Cleese is talking religion on the Dick Cavett show. And the Dick Cavett show was a long time ago, so I'm guessing, I know the folks at Monty Python took some heat for Life of Brian when it came out, because many folks took it as mocking religion. So that's the way that goes, but let's see what this conversation is. Here we go.
By the way, getting into the movie Life of Brian, by the way, does any of you admit to naming the group Monty Python's Flying Circus? Is there a controversy about who?
Well, yes, the problem we had of finding a good title for it was almost the worst problem we had with the whole show. You know, we had the show written on the first one, and we didn't know what to call it. And we had a whole lot of fanciful titles, like we wanted to call it a horse, a spoon, and a basin.
And a basin,
which I really liked. And somebody else wanted to call it Bun Wacket, Buzzard, Stubble, and Boot, Owl Stretching Time, the Toad Elevating Moment. There were all these suggestions. And one day we sat around and got very drunk, and we had to come up with a title. And somebody had already started to call it the Flying Circus. In fact, the BBC had started to call it that, and they'd started writing it in their schedules in ink, you know. So they said, well, could you call it the Flying Circus, because otherwise we have to write out new schedules. So we said, it's a nice title. And then we couldn't decide who, and we thought it might be Gwen Dibley's Flying Circus, because she'd been Michael Palin's music teacher when he was 11. And then somehow we went off Gwen Dibley. I don't know why. She could be famous, you know.
Had someone else used her name, perhaps?
No, nobody.
Dynamic of life.
Gwen Dibley.
And somebody came out with Monty Python, and we all fell about. And I mean, I can't explain why. We just thought it was funny that night.
Presumably you haven't been sued by anyone named that. It sometimes happens when you were...
Groucho Marx had that, didn't he? He had a character called Phineas X Flitterwaggle.
One of the most preposterous names.
That's right.
And one showed up in Corning, Iowa or somewhere and sued him.
Sued him. Second night, yeah.
Thaddeus T. Flywheel? No,
something like that, yeah.
One of them. By the way, I have read the Life of Brian script. I don't know whether this is the shooting script or is it ex post facto or after the fact.
It's the shooting script with a few things still left in that we actually edited by the time the movie got on the screen.
Oh, so there's a few things in here that aren't in the film?
Yes, one or two of the offensive things which we took out.
But if you just glance down the list of characters, the Virgin Mandy and Mr. Big Nose and the man further forward, and so there are many of these that are just wonderful. There's an ex-leper, which is a character, sort of a stock character these days, isn't it? And
that's brilliant.
A Deadly Dirk and Pilot's Wife and a Boring Prophet. And in among Biggest Dickus and Intensely Dull Youth and Simon the Holy Man and so on, there's this wonderful mixture of character types. And then you notice that there are only, I think, 6 names. A casual observer would notice that most of the parts are played by the same people.
Well, yes, the 6 of us played a lot of them. We had what
there
we
are
called,
other people, of course.
Yes,
but
we called our repertory company, and there were 5 of them, and they played everything. But on the previous film, the Holy Grail, I remember the last day but one of the movie being driven to the location, and I said to the driver, I said, you've managed to sneak into a couple of scenes, haven't you? How many have you actually been in? And he said, I played 11 parts so far.
The driver.
And he was aiming to get it up to 15 by the end of the movie. You know, so if the driver's playing 15, we're working pretty hard.
Has... Tell me which way the controversy has been flowing lately, and on which side of the Atlantic is it more intense? I remember I don't know how many weeks ago it was, I heard the radio announcement of something that sounded in its tone as if there had been an outbreak of World War II or something, and it had to do with outraged religious groups that had seen
here in New York.
Film in New York.
Yes.
I think I switched on the radio to the phrase "a vicious attack on Judaism." Now, at what point did you all sit down and decide to make this vicious attack on Judaism and Christianity and everything that everyone holds sacred? How can we talk about that?
Well, we just, after the Holy Grail, somebody suggested that it would be interesting to try and write a comedy set at the time of Christ. And you see, well, you know this, but when you start to write, you don't know where it's going to go. So you say, well, let's try this direction, and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. And we had an idea maybe that Brian was the 13th disciple, but he had a very demanding wife, and he was always late, so that, he arrived 2 minutes after the water had been turned into wine,
Missed everything.
And he missed everything, and that he never got to the Last Supper because his wife had friends coming round, and he was going to meet them at the garden afterwards, and he went to a club called the Garden,
This is, the life of Brian and even the things he's bringing up is very simply broken down into the human element, keeping it human, not dehumanizing it, putting real, whether you want to character flaws or just human dynamics into who these people were versus how we've sort of lionized or idolized the people in the Bible, because when we see it as the Word of God and it's sacred, we don't see it as human any longer. We've removed it from the realm of humanity into the realm of some other worldliness and holiness, if you will, so it becomes unassailable. We don't attribute human flaws or normal human dynamics to it. But it's even in there if we remove ourselves from this notion that it's the Word of God, which I used to believe decades ago, but then I rewrote the New Testament in my own words over a period of 1.5 years. It took me a lot longer than I thought it would. And I was working off of 6 radically different English translations. So it was a paraphrastic version. It wasn't a translation because I don't speak Greek or Hebrew or Aramaic. So when I did my version, I realized that the underpinnings of my faith were just wrong. They were countered in the text themselves. They were saying the exact opposite, that these are my words, the people who wrote them, Paul, including Paul, the very beginning of Mark. I give my reasons for writing this, O excellent Theophilus. Everybody else has given their account of what's taken place. I'm giving you my account. That's said so often and in so many ways that it didn't come as dictation from God. So once you remove this Word of God, this is perfect, it's flawless, it comes from Him, but it's mankind's or people's account of what they thought was taking place. It reinserts the humanity into the texts. Now, I don't know what Cleese's views are. He could be an atheist, but they're having fun with this theological topic, the biblical narrative. But then it opens up these vistas, these different ways. Oh, you could look at Brian as the 13th apostle, but he has this nagging wife and he's always late to everything and such. And that's one of the things that they are brilliant at. Monty Python, the whole series, everything they do, all focuses brilliantly in the way Brits can on human frailty, the human dynamic, how it actually plays out. All right, let's see where else he goes.
We tried this and we found it just didn't work, because the moment that you got near the figure of Christ, really near, it just really wasn't funny, because Christ was wise and flexible and intelligent, and he didn't have any of the things that, comedy is about envy, right? Greed, malice, avarice, lust, stupidity.
Humanity.
I remember an American, Harvey Orkin, once telling me, and he said, you cannot make a comedy about St. Francis of Assisi. There's nothing funny about it.
Yes, as they say, where do you go with it? To hell would be the answer. So, but, even talking about religious subjects in the way we are now offends some people, and I don't know what assumptions lie behind that. One of them, of course, being that there's nothing funny about certain things. This is wrong. I can't think of anything there's nothing funny about in some sense. And same people who talk about how humor is
Dave
a
Chappelle
healing,
said that.
Wonderful thing, then don't want it applied to certain areas. Weird. A lot of.
I find it very difficult. But the trouble is, what do you mean by religion? Some of the PBS viewers, I believe, may have seen a series called The Long Search by a guy called Ronald Eyre, who made it for the BBC, and it was an investigation into 13 programs, basically into 13 religions. I think he did 3 on Buddhism. He traveled and did all the basic main religions in some detail. Yeah. Judaism, Lutheranism, Catholicism. I think he even did the Church of England. I think he even found a program for that. Surprised it got in under the heading of religion, but anyway.
Maybe it was there for variety.
It's a little light relief around number 6. Yeah. And the thing about it, when he came to see this film, he said he thought it was a very religious film. And I may surprise you if I say I think it's a religious film. I think all the messages in it, in fact, are profoundly religious. But Ron Eyre did say, and I hope he won't mind my
did their research,
quoting him, that a lot of people that he thinks are not religious will be angry about it. And it simply depends on what you mean by religion. If you take religion to be a sort of revelatory and rather authoritarian creed, you know, in which certain things are handed down, must not be examined, must be obeyed, and there is a sort of an authoritarian structure enforcing it. If that's what you mean by religion, then I suppose it is in many ways anti-religious, but it's certainly not against Christ or anything Christ said. It is against the manifestations of certain aspects of organized religion. And I think one's entitled to criticize people.
Yeah.
Yes. Have you seen this kind of writing about the movie? There's a piece in the Washington Post by a man who said, I'm not going to see the movie, and I realize I can be accused of burning a book I haven't read, but I'm not going to go see a movie that makes fun of Christ. I don't need that. You know? Well,
the answer is, I would swear that as far as I'm concerned, it does not make fun of Christ at any moment.
No, in fact, well, perhaps you should explain one thing about the plot that we may have left out. Brian has the, I guess, ill luck to be born on the same night that the three wise men are making their journey.
Right.
And they go to the wrong place. That's the triggering mechanism.
That's right. They finish up in the wrong stable.
Yeah.
Which is nice because, you know, we hear the story now of the three wise men arriving. But it's a very odd thing indeed to find three Oriental astrologers in full gear, carrying gold into frankincense and myrrh, wandering around a cowshed at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's odd. I mean, we accept it because we've been brought up. But if you look at it that way, it's peculiar. What are they doing? Yeah. One of them says led by a star, and Mandy, Brian's mother, says led by a bottle more like. Which, you know, is the natural assumption, exactly.
Yeah.
Natural, exactly.
Do you have any idea, or does anybody, where comedy leaves off and satire begins? Is it satire in the movie when Brian has all these followers that he definitely does not want, and they even stand outside and repeat his phrases and say, yes, oh, that's so true. And he tries to tell them, please, don't do this. I'm capsulizing, of course. And then a wonderful moment in the script says, remember, you are all individuals. And in unison, they chant, yes, we are all individuals. That must be satire, mustn't it?
I think
have we crossed into the line?
I think so, yes. And then almost my favorite line in the movie, which never ever gets a laugh, when he says to them, you've got to work it out for yourself. And they say, yes, we've got to work it out for ourselves. And he says, yes. And then there's a pause, and they say, tell us more. And he says, no, that's the point. I got a laugh.
Yes.
It never gets a laugh in the movie.
But you redeemed it here. Wonder why that should be.
Oh, that was good. I was too young with the Dick Cavett show. I didn't see this interview. I mean, I wasn't interested in talk show back then. But I love the interview. I love the perspective. I love the ideas. John Cleese, very smart. Dick Cavett, I didn't realize he was a very good interviewer. Very bright, articulate, just right there in the moment. And obviously John Cleese, explaining what he was doing. And the way he said what the movie was is exactly how I've always taken it to be. And I knew, having been a student of the Bible for quite a while, years ago, and I'm like, this is exactly the way it might be if you went into the wrong tent. Now, some people might be offended that the Magi could never go into the wrong tent. God was directing them. They were wise men and all that stuff. But even in the movie, Brian's mother is played by a man, of course, which some people got offended at as well. But that was just part of the satire. But the quip that, well, it doesn't sound very wise. Okay, guys, I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you enjoyed that. It's good to have the backstory on that movie because I'm going to be doing more scenes from Life of Brian. Just absolutely a classic movie. So have a great day. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you on another video. Keep thinking theology.